Hey everyone, we're here with a new segment of the complete menu, something I have not repurposed from the 100% Feck Saga. But we've got Legend of Zelda on the NES Master Quest. It's a full-on guide, and in 21 easy steps we'll be able to complete this game. All hearts, all items, all dungeons shown off. Yeah, pretty much everything you need to get a complete playthrough of the game. The first thing you want to do if you want to jump straight into Master Quest is, as you can see here, name the file Zelda and select that, because the Master Quest is available as soon as you finish the first run through. If you want to jump into the Master Quest straight away, or if you have somehow deleted your save file, then you're gonna have to rename a file Zelda in order to jump straight in, like I had to do for the recording. Now, before we enter the first dungeon, there's a couple of things we have to do. Already at step 3, but we have to get the sword, which is simple as entering the cave. And the old man says it's dangerous to go alone. Take this, and he gives us a stick. Very pointy stick. I mean, I can only assume we're clubbing the enemy over the head with it. Second step is to get bombs of any kind. This can take a really short time or a really long time. Really depends on how generous the enemy drops are. I managed to get mine really quickly. I am cutting out a lot of tedium, such as backtracking and enemy grinding, and also money grinding. I'll be cutting all that stuff out. The third step is to farm enough rupees to get the blue ring. Or is that the fourth step? No, I'm not sure. Actually, yeah. So, it costs 250 rupees to get the blue ring. And then the fourth step is to farm some more money and come to this shop. It's probably the easiest and the cheapest, to go and get 2 more items of use, the candle and the shield, I believe. So, a quick run through of what we've been doing. Bombs help you blow up walls in dungeons. Don't think they can be used in the overworld, but they are good for kind of a blast impact damage. Sometimes you just find yourself overwhelmed in dungeons. You can just place a bomb, and that might take care of some things. It saved my bacon a couple of times in this run through. What you use the defense ring for, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it goes and doubles your defense. So enemies that do 1 heart of damage now do half. Enemies that do half damage do quarter. The game does keep track of quarter damage, but it does not show it, because the smallest increment, as you can see actually on the screen right now, it shows it up in halves. And when you are at full health, you get the Master Sword ability, as you can see on screen right now. See, I got hit by that Octorok, but Octoroks do half damage, or at least red Octoroks do. So I took a quarter damage because I had the blue ring on. And so the game, while it counts the quarter damage, it won't show until I take another quarter damage or something larger. And then it'll show half damage like it did there. Forget what these... I want to say these things are moblins, but when I got hit by one of these croissant throwing moblins, I took another quarter damage, and that removed my Master Sword ability. Then the purpose of the flame is to light up bushes that reveal secret passageways, and also to light up dark rooms. Now, there's 2 varieties of candles. There's a blue candle that can only be used once per screen. You have to exit the screen and come back to use it on the same screen again. And then you got the red candle, which can be used multiple times in the screen. And it does hurt you and the enemies, so if you can set it as a kind of a landmine. And say the skeleton was walking around, Starfos, you can drop a flame, and you can walk into it if it, and it'll take damage. The point of the shield, well, Link already starts with a shield, or I guess in this case Zelda, yeah, Zelda's the one in green, right? Starts with a shield, but you can upgrade the shield to a larger one, and that blocks a lot of projectiles. It blocks physical projectiles such as arrows, boomerangs, and the rocks shot by the Octoroks. It doesn't block anything magical, at least what I've come across, anything that can be classified as magical, except for those shockwaves given by the Wizrooms. It's always good to have, but you can lose the shield. But at minimum it costs 90 rupees to get it back again. So if you ever lose the shield, which we'll get into later, you can buy it back. And that's about it in terms of pre-dungeon prep. Now, we're already halfway into this dungeon. How the dungeon is going to work is we're going to get a quick glimpse of where it is on the overworld, and then a zoom in on what you're looking for the dungeon entrance. In this case, it's kind of an island in the middle of the map with a tree. Pretty much you head inside the tree, you get to the dungeon. And then after that, I'll show you a general layout of how to get to the main items in the dungeon. Main items, at least I think, are important, are the compass, the map, which I just picked up there. The compass tells you where's the end goal. The map gives you a layout of the dungeon, which you can see is the letter E. It looks like a letter E, and you can tell you where you are in that dungeon. So right now I'm kind of in the center of the dungeon. I'm heading north. There's always an item to get, sometimes two, and there's the Triforce shard, which is pretty much the main plot of this game. The plot doesn't change for Master Quest. You have to collect 8 shards of the Triforce of Wisdom, because you have the Triforce of Power, and I believe it's the Triforce of Wisdom that has been shattered. I could be wrong, but one of the Triforces that isn't Ganon's Triforce has been shattered, whilst you have your own. And you got to collect the 8 shards, or 1 shard per dungeon, and when you collect the shard, you exit the dungeon. Now, the treasure for Dungeon 1 is a boomerang, which is very helpful. Boomerangs can stun enemies, and when you upgrade the boomerang to a magical boomerang, which we'll see later, you can kill really weak enemies like the Keese. I think that's the little blobs. I think those are the only enemies that can die from the boomerang. Everything else just gets stopped in their tracks. But that's also pretty handy because touch damage is a problem in this game, and you want to minimize as much touch damage as you can so you can keep that Master Sword ability where you shoot out a sword. So you can see the boomerang in action. It's killing off the Keese one by one. As soon as you get the boomerang, you can kill Keese. If you upgrade it, doesn't do any extra damage, but I think those are the only things you can kill. The magic boomerang has double range, so there's something you can use for that. Now, these bubbles, if they flash multicolored, you're in the clear. If you touch it, you lose your sword ability for a couple of seconds. But if you hit a red one, you lose your sword ability permanently. You can't use your sword. And if you hit a blue one, you gain it back. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest gripe of this run through, is getting hit by a red bubble and looking the dungeon for a blue one. The boss that I just wiped the floor with was... what was his name? I'm going to do a quick Google search. Aquamentus, that's the one. Yeah, so key to Aquamentus is to hit him in the head. Now, we've gotten as much overworld items as we can. We've gotten a Triforce, which is a nice full heal. So that's always another thing. If you're on full health, I'd recommend going ham against the bosses because you're getting a full health on the other side of the door. Now, not sure what I'm doing here, but I think I might be clearing out this so I can easily enter the dungeon, because this is the dungeon location. It is on the corner of the giant lake that surrounds, that is in the center of Hyrule. If you touch these knights, they start moving. You want to touch the top center one, and you enter Dungeon 2. Now, Dungeon 2 is a little more difficult. I recommend when you take these dungeons on Master Quest to try to dodge any unnecessary fights. In this room, I'm attempting to get... Sometimes it's worth killing the enemies because they have nice drops. They can drop rupees or bombs or even hearts. Sometimes fairies if you're lucky. Fairies heal up to 3 hearts. So if you're low like me, I think it might be worth trying to clear the room out. Very easily can enter the top room and get out. Now the treasure in Dungeon 2 is the whistle. Oh yeah, and there's other reasons that I clear out the room of enemies, because I've got the guide on standby. Some enemies drop keys when you clear the entire room, so that's also necessary. You have a limited amount of keys, and you can see over there on the right, there is a key door that could lead to treasure or a compass map, a compass or a map. It's very useful to have keys on hand, and I accidentally touched the door and opened it. I do not think that was my intention. And this is the second thing the boomerang can kill, is these little blobs. So now I'm wondering what the hell do I do. So in terms of the jump cuts in the dungeons, there's going to be a lot of cutting. That's usually if I have died or I'm figuring out what to do next, because actually he's one of them now. Yeah, that didn't happen. I actually killed all these keys, laid waste to them. But yeah, I try to keep the run-throughs very quick, because no one wants to see repeated attempts at multiple rooms. If I die, I just edit this stuff out because it's just tedious. And getting back to where you are and getting back to full strength takes a lot of time, because you either have to go to a specific spot where fairies fully heal you, or you got to drink a potion, and doing that takes time. That's not something anyone wants to see in a guide. The wooden sword is not very effective in terms of killing things. You've got to be extremely patient, because if there is a scaling power level, it's not readily apparent, but I want to take a guess that it doubles every time you upgrade your sword, because you can upgrade your sword up to 3 times in this game. So say this is a power rating of 1, the next sword will be 2 and the next sword will be 4. And here we have, I believe this is a mid-boss, because I can leave at any time. It's Dig Dogger. The way to kill it is to hope that it runs into a bomb. Luckily it did actually in 2 shots, that's very uncommon. And it dropped a key, so it's definitely worth your time to take care of him. Ooh, and here we have Dark Knights, which I skipped. Very wise to do so. It's not worth the time to fight a Dark Knight because they can only be damaged from the back. so you have to plan your sword strikes accordingly, and that's very tedious. And here we go, this is the map room. So the map here is shaped like an A, and you're starting to notice that there's some lettering consistency with the dungeon layouts, and that is a theme of Master Quest. At least the first 5 dungeons spell out the word Zelda. I believe this is the treasure room. Usually, actually 100% of the time, the treasure room is always led down these stairs into a layout like this, where you gotta climb in a pseudo 3D room. And it's always good to get rid of these bats because you don't want to die in a room. These rooms are pretty easy. There's only ever keys in this room, so getting the treasure is pretty easy. So we have the whistle now. The only thing, the whistle has a bunch of random effects. Sometimes it can reveal the entrance to a dungeon, but the primary use is to walk you to a front of a dungeon you've already entered. You don't have to have cleared the dungeon, you just have to have entered the dungeon. So say I spent off screen going to all 8 dungeons into the first room and then exited back out, that would be enough for the whistle to walk me there. A little tornado appears off screen, and you can dodge the Sharknado. You can dodge a tornado, but if you choose to get swept up in it, it'll take you to the entrance of a dungeon. It's a good, but still randomized way to walk, because it's not sequential. It doesn't go dungeon 1, dungeon 2, dungeon 3, and so on. It just takes you to a random dungeon. You could actually end up going to the same dungeon twice. Not in a row, but very close together. Like you could end up walking to 3, then 2, then 3 again. So we've gotten that we've entered the door that I've accidentally touched, which might have actually been a blessing in disguise. So we want to go, we've gotten the map heading towards the compass and the item in this dungeon. These spiked obstacles, I wouldn't say they're enemies, they seem mechanical in design. All you gotta do to trigger them is enter the row they are guarding, more or less, and get them to close in on you, and as they retract slowly, and there's your opportunity to enter. These little globules, they are probably your first instance of splitting enemies, and the more powerful your sword is, the more likely you're able to one-hit KO them. Here I am trying to navigate this room so I don't get hit by the mummies, so I can keep my Master Sword. Well, not the Master Sword per se, you don't actually get the Master Sword in this game, but the projectile that you shoot, because it's very handy. It is probably the strongest projectile in the game, because it upgrades with your sword. So if you get the most powerful sword in the game, you will be able to shoot it from a distance, and it travels the screen. So pretty much it is your earliest long-reaching and most powerful projectile. And here I'm trying to preserve it. Here we got Juliok, it's a 3-headed dragon, the boss of this dungeon. It looks like that I'm damaging its body, but in actuality you gotta hit its head. Either, maybe you won't even see this with YouTube compression, but it might not even flash, but you see every time it delivers a hit, the body's flashing. It takes about 10 hits to kill, or 8 hits, around about, and if you stand in the doorway, none of its shots can hurt you, and you can't block the shots with your shield. So this is a tried and true strategy where try to shoot a sword beam whenever you can, and then come back. And once you kill one of its heads, it starts floating around, and it's invulnerable and starts adding more projectiles to the mix. But you just have to worry about the head that's still there. And around this point I got hurt, so I just decided to go ham, because I know there's going to be a free heal around the corner. And always make sure to pick up the heart container. And there we go, Triforce Shard number 2. That was relatively quick. In 20 minutes we've already done a quarter of the main campaign. Zelda 1's not very long. And here we have the item screen. We've got a checklist of all the items and heart containers. And with that, I will see you for part 2.